Hi guys, and thank you for joining me. Welcome to another Tuesday video, and it's a bit of a rainy Tuesday video here in the southwest in the UK today. Firstly, thanks ever so much for the lovely comments and likes and stuff that I received on my snippet of one of the tracks I'm working on for this sort of drumming solo album that I've been making for the last 100 years. And it'll be made in another 50 probably, and completed and finally out and about. But yeah, it was just a little snippet. That track is actually 8 minutes long. Do a performance piece there and then in the studio. Of course, it was Nick Allen's studio. He very kindly lent me his microphone, so I've got some lovely microphones to use, top studio quality mics. Just going into my Focusrite interface, going into my MacBook or whatever. So there's no sort of jiggery pokery, but the drum sound I got on that day was absolutely lovely. And lovely, there's lovely. And people have commented on that, so thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy with the sound I got. So yeah, the idea was to record it and try and make it atmospheric or exciting or whatever I wanted it to be. I didn't go in there with any plan, and then go home and compose the music around the drum part, because so often I'm doing it the other way around. Now, I know I explained this last week, but just going through it again in case somebody didn't see that clip. Yeah, so thank you for that. Now today, and the reason I say that is because that drum track was recorded on my smaller version of my DW kit. Now, this goes to the question for today, which is basically, bigger kits or smaller kits. It's one of those things that people ask me a lot. And as I say, I bring it up because people wrote to me and said, what kit was that you used on that recording? Was it the Leedy? Was it the Ludwig Super Classic? Was it the smaller DW or the bigger DW? What the hell was it? And it was the smaller DW, which was just, it would have been my 14x8 snare drum. It would have been the 12 rack tom, 12x10, whatever it is, and 14x14 floor tom. Now, it sounds like there's more toms on it. If there was a 10 on there, it would have been like a 10x9 or something. Then apologies if there is an extra tone there, but I'm pretty sure it's just the 4-piece, and with the 18-inch bass drum, 18, 12, 14, and the snare drum. And then it's all a question of, mic placements. But, this is one of the things. People say vintage or modern kits and big kits against smaller kits. And I love them all. Of those 4 kits that I've just listed, they've all got their own character and their own personality. A bit like people that buy shed loads of guitars. People say, why have you got that one? Why is that different to this and that and the other? It's because every wood's different, every shape is different, the way they're made, everything about it is different, same as the drums. You don't get 2 drum kits really that sound the same. And you start putting different heads on them, different tunings, and, I've always said to people, you could have 2, forget whatever brand you want to say, Pearl, Mapex, DW, Ludwig, Gretsch, whatever, same kit side by side, and just set them up, same sizes, and play them. They're going to sound different with different heads on. That's just the way it is. And that sort of gives us the feeling that, maybe it's a naive feeling, that we can get our own sound. Everybody wants their own sound. And over the years, there's certain ways that I tune that I think people know when I'm playing, which is nice. I'm not saying everybody in the world would know when I'm playing, but certain friends and musicians and engineers and producers who know me well, who ask me to work with them, recognise my sound. Same as I've phrased with cymbals and things like that when we talked about framing the music. That's a similar thing. So for me, I see them all as colours. And very soon I'm going to be having a Gretsch kit, which is at the moment is in Austin, Texas, with a good friend of mine, Chris Bennett. He's got that kit, and at some point it's going to be in this living room, and I'll be here with it saying, this is the 13-inch tom, this is the 16-inch floor tom, this is the bass drum. But that day is yet to come. We've got customs to worry about and shipping, but that's a whole nother thing. But it's, I'll go into that another time anyway. But there'll be a Gretsch in the mix as well at some point. But each of them, as I say, give me something different. And sometimes when I'm recording, I'll mix them all up, and it'll be like a bit of a Frankenstein kit with old and new. And that gives me an interesting sound as well. Looks a bit funky, of course, but can sound brilliant. But there's, certain things like, certain toms, we won't do certain jobs. If you want a sound of an 8 or a 10-inch tom and you've only got a 12, tuning a 12 high, I don't care how high you go, top and bottom, it's never going to sound like an 8 or a 10. Equally, with an 18-inch bass drum, you're never going to get that to sound in a live situation in a room as deep as a 24-inch, of course, or a 26. But of course, you put a mic in it, and actually, bizarrely, an 18-inch has got more depth and lower tone in it than a 24, which is always a bit weird. That whole sound physics thing freaks me out. But yeah, and when I take my 18-inch bass drum to the Chapel Arts Centre in Bath, which is a great venue, Ed the sound man always goes, "Oh no, not that bass drum. It's so hard to control in this room," which I think I've mentioned before. So certain things, you know, are made to do certain jobs, you know, so it's kind of, if you're trying to do, you got a 26-inch bass drum. I know there's these famous stories of Buddy Rich and Louis Bellson saying you can play a trio gig on a 26. You kind of can. Of course, they're absolutely right. Why would I argue with two of the finest players that ever graced this earth? But at the same time, not everybody is Buddy Rich or Louis Bellson, you know. Yes, you can play sensitively on a bigger drum, but it's still going to have a certain amount of space that it takes up when you play it, you know, the note. So as much as that is true, as I say, I'll probably get loads of people saying, "Oh, you can't say that." But as far as I can tell, I'm more comfortable playing an 18 in a jazz setting than I would be if somebody put a 24 in front of me. Of course, I could control the sound, put some damping down there if I had to, do different bits and bobs to sort it out. But really, visually, it would look wrong for me as well. So there's all these different things that come in, and I'm so glad that it's so subjective. And I like it when people don't agree, as I sometimes don't agree with them. It's a good thing, keeps the whole thing moving around, keeps it interesting. But for me, it's always been a question of both. Big and small kits are really important, you know. If I went on stage, for instance, with Susie, and I'm on a big drum riser, sometimes 6 foot off the ground. I mean, it's never high as Ringo, like 20 foot or something off the ground. Like some of those old clips of them playing, he was like 10, 15 foot off the ground. Amazing. Which made it even harder to hear the lads anyway when they were screaming, but that's a whole another thing. I would never play my 18-inch jazz kit on that sort of size stage, big festival stage, you know, when you want to play a big perform, you know, in a grand sort of setting like that. It just would look wrong. I'm not saying it wouldn't sound good, you know, I could tune them down, blah, 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 but it's never going to sound the same as the kit that I've got, you know, which is the 22, 12, 13, 16, 18. That's a size to deal with, you know, to reckon with. Any bigger than that and it gets too much for me personally. But if I was playing like 18, 12, 14, yeah, I could tune them down, put some moon gels on them and put some pinstripes and make them low, but it just aesthetically wouldn't be pleasing for the audience or for myself. So as I say, it's subjective. Not everyone's going to agree with that, but you know, this is how I feel about this question, which I do get often asked, you know, like we always see with that little drum kit. Is that on a lot of the recordings? No, I mean, the Latin Grammy winning album with Laura was on the bigger kit. The stuff I did with Hugh Cornwell back in the day, that was on a bigger kit. The Simple Mind sessions were on a bigger kit. You know, it's not the general rule that I'll go out with that little drum kit. But I posted about it a minute ago, and I said some nice things about it online because it's just the kit I'll take to rehearsals, and I'll take for kind of, if we're just doing a bit of sort of research and development, you know, on songs. I won't take the big kit along all the time because I don't need it. As long as it's got a bass snare and a couple of toms for some colour, that's all that matters. But when it comes down and I hear what the music's going to be like and the sounds that are needed, then I'll think, right, vintage snare drum or vintage bass drum or modern bass drum, but vintage toms if we were recording. When it's live, I'll just get my bigger toms and tune them accordingly to sound a bit like a vintage kit if that's what I think it's going to do, because I don't want that sort of Frankenstein kit look on a stage. I don't mind in the studio, but I don't want sort of random colours on the stage when I'm playing, because it's just, again, not pleasing for me. And if I'm not comfortable as the performer going out playing on a certain kit, I'm not going to play well. You know, no one's going to play well under those conditions. So, you know, I've got a dental appointment apparently just coming through there. Okay, fair enough. I haven't heard from them for months, and now all of a sudden they're saying, you've got an appointment. Yeah, so I don't know how you feel. So obviously leave your comments below or email me, whatever. You know, it's an interesting conversation. And sometimes if money doesn't allow, obviously you either have one or the other. And I've had people say to me, what do I do? And I said, well, go in between the 18 and the 22, get a 20-inch bass drum, you know, because that'll come with a that'll come with a 12 rack tom, 14 floor or 13 and a 16. That's good. And then it's a question of heads, being crafty with your tuning, making sure you've got some white coated, whether it be Evans or whatever company. I use Remo, but if you've got your white ambassadors or emperors, you got that for a certain sound. And then you can get your pinstripes or whatever, whatever brand you use, G2s or whatever they are for Evans. You put those on the toms, and then you've got a slightly lower sound. And on the bottom, apart from my old 60s kits, I've always got clear, Remo clears anyway, regardless of what I put on the top. And it's a question of sitting with the kit and tuning and working it out, making sure you know how to get the longer note from the bottom head and the shorter one, tuning them the same and things like that. Just go into a practice room or into the shed or whatever, wherever you're not going to upset anybody, your neighbours and friends, because the neighbours won't be your friends once you start playing drums. And yeah, find out what your drum kit can do. That's a way to do it. But if you have got the finance and you can afford it, then yeah, having an 18-inch bass drum set up and a 22 would be great, because they're so different to each other, which is why when I get endorsements, I always get an 18-inch bass drum, a 22, and then as many toms as money will allow in that colour. And it's all in the same colour, and a few different snare drums, a few different depths and what have you, different dimensions. And a few floor toms that I've got. So what I've got is I've got 8, 10, 12, 13 rack toms, 14, 16, 18 floor toms, and 2 snares, a 13-inch snare by 5 and a 14 by 8. Then I've got all of the sizes catered for. So as I say, leave some comments below. Let me know what you think. I mean, no one's a complete expert on this, but in my playing career, that's it. Over 30 odd years, that's what I find works for me. And I've got a few vintage snares that are over there stacked up as well, so I've got a few choices. But yeah, big and small, both is what I say. Try and get both if you can, but going for a 20-inch bass drum in between is a good happy medium. All right, guys, well, I hope that was interesting. So I've got all these messages coming through. Good to see you. Have a great week. Hopefully you can come, if you're local to the southwest of Bradford-on-Avon, come and see me play with Little Men. That'd be good. And if you're interested in drum lessons, sign up. I've got a few spaces left, not many, but I've got a few, especially for online. Online's good. Face-to-face is getting a bit busy. Anyway, either way, contact me. All right, guys, take care. Speak soon.